Go ahead, Dorothy.
Oh, beautiful. And Miss Camay, are you gonna put your slides up?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, everybody, welcome. We are so excited to have you here today. And what a great group. I feel like so honored to be able to introduce Miss Kamei today, who is our Vice President of the National Workplace Bullying Coalition, a dear friend, and just an all-around amazing person. And okay, beautiful. So I want to tell you just a little bit about Miss Kamei because we are so lucky to have her expertise this evening. So Miss Kamei is a professional paralegal with a BA in legal studies from Purdue. She has over 2 decades of legal experience in commercial business, insurance, defense litigation, personal injury, and professional paralegal consulting. Ms. Kamei is a humanitarian award recipient for her advocacy around workplace bullying after she was bullied in the workplace while working for a Fortune 500 insurance company. Ms. Kamei is the vice president of the National Workplace Bullying Coalition and currently is advocating for the Dignity at Work Act, which would provide protections to targets of workplace bullying and the employers who protect them. So in just a second, we are going to get rocking and rolling, and we are going to learn so much from Miss Kamei. As we go, as Miss Kamei mentioned, we are recording. So if for any reason you don't want to share your video or you want to change your name, sometimes people do that. Absolutely. We will probably post this recording so that we can have other people have that opportunity to learn from it. Miss Kamei is going to go ahead and talk through her work and her research. And then at the end, we're going to invite people to ask questions. And you can kind of do that a couple different ways. You are welcome to unmute yourself and just ask the question. Or if you prefer, you can put it in the chat and then I'll read the question for you and I'll leave out your name so it will be anonymized. And last but not least, if you would like to make a donation to the National Workplace Bullying Coalition so we can continue to do this good work, we would so appreciate it. And you're going to find a link for those donations also in the chat. So Miss Kamei, I think we are ready to get rocking and rolling. I'm so looking forward to what you're going to share.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Dorothy. Dorothy is an executive board member with the National Workplace Bullying Coalition herself. She presented in our week 1 of our webinar series. So if any of you who are watching today didn't have a chance to join us or haven't had a chance to catch that, if you head on over to YouTube and search for the National Workplace Bullying Coalition, like our channel, subscribe to our channel, you'll find Dorothy's presentation there, as well as our president, Jerry Carbo, who presented week 2 in our webinar series. So I want to thank each and every one of you for joining this webinar today. I'm here to talk to you about addressing workplace bullying in the workplace. And I like to start my webinar with kind of a little fun. I like to ask the question to the participants in the webinar, are you a workplace bully? And the reason why I like to start my presentation with that question is I have found in my consulting with targets in the workplace and also working with fellow board members at the National Workplace Bullying Coalition, I have found that some bullies do not know that they're bullying people. Some people are not aware of their behavior being borderline toxic. And it's because no one has given them feedback or they have no self-awareness regarding their behavior. And so there are some handouts that are attached to this webinar. If you guys don't have them now, I'll circulate them at the end of the webinar. There are 14 questions in this webinar that what they do is they strive to invoke a self-awareness. And if you take the assessment and you may be surprised by the results, but it's an effort to raise awareness and in each and every one of us. I even do this myself with all the work that I've done and the platform that I stand on. I always am self-aware of my behavior, my communication, and how other people receive that. When my intention is to be assertive, is someone else interpreting it a different way? And so most bullies lack self-awareness. They lack the skill set to pinpoint and adjust their toxic traits. Oftentimes they perceive the target as a threat and oftentimes seek power through aggression. And this is not an excuse. This is not an excuse for somebody to bully in the workplace. It's, an exercise aimed at building awareness. So the first thing that I want to talk to you guys about is what exactly is bullying behavior, okay? So if you attended Dorothy's presentation when she talked about big tent belonging, if you attended Jerry's webinar presentation, he defined workplace bullying. So I just want to touch on it a little bit here in my webinar. Bullying defined as a psychological power imbalance between the bully and the target. And it is can cause psychological and physical injuries to targets and bystanders. I'm going to talk a little bit more about bystanders later on in my webinar. That can look like or feel like aggressiveness, manipulation of work, and humiliation, and can come across in insults, snide comments, invasion of personal space, nasty emails, giving unmanageable workloads, impossible deadlines as well. Arbitrarily changing tasks so the workload creates confusion, hiding or withholding tools, documents, and information related to the work, making practical jokes, teasing you, even taunting you on social media, or even publicly pointing out mistakes. And so those are some examples kind of to define bullying behavior. When those behaviors are going on in a workplace, what happens is the work environment becomes hostile, right? And it becomes difficult to work in those types of environments. And it can feel like or look like denying an employee access to resources, projects, or opportunities, little or no feedback on performance, inaccurate performance ratings, or documenting untrue facts, threatening job loss, hostile emails, excessive monitoring or micromanagement, interference or sabotage, treating a worker differently, humiliation, public reprimands, or obscene language. So these types of behaviors can create a hostile work environment. I want to give you guys a little bit of feedback from my own personal experience. My consulting work and my teachings and my education have come from my own experience of being bullied in the workplace. And when it was happening to me, I did not know what it was. I did not acknowledge that I was being bullied in the workplace until somebody actually told me that this is what was happening to me. I had an attorney that I worked for who was recently promoted. I had been in my job for about 3 years. I was a high achiever in my job. I was a senior paralegal in my role. I had received great, fabulous, if you will, reviews and merit increases every year. And all of a sudden, this new lead counsel came in, and all of a sudden, I didn't know what I was doing. And the work that I was doing was wrong, and the processes that I was following were incorrect. And I had to battle my bully without the support of an organization such as NWBC. This was happening back in 2015 when no one was talking about being bullied in the workplace. And so the information that I share, the tools and resources I share, are tools and resources that I have implemented into my own workplace bullying experience, that has afforded me an avenue out and an open door out to my next career move. And it has provided me the ability to maintain my own personal power in a situation where I'm working with a bully at work. I've experienced all of these things listed here, and not just for one day, but these were repeated events. And so this type of behavior, when we talk about workplace bullying, they have to be repetitive and they have to be pervasive in nature to be called or considered a hostile work environment. You know, everybody can have a bad day, you know, here and there. That's not necessarily workplace bullying. So these types of behaviors that go on that are repetitive, that are pervasive, can be considered as workplace bullying and creating a hostile work environment. So the next thing that I want to talk about, to targets who are bullied in the workplace, documentation is one of the most powerful tools you can use to support your complaint of bullying in the workplace. Documenting factual evidence, um, it helps to empower you in the situation. And I know that might sound confusing to you guys right now, but when you're able to document what is happening to you, and you're able to leave out the dramatics, or you're able to leave out the emotions, and the emotional aspect of what's happening, it's very powerful. Communication between you and the person that's bullying you, oftentimes it's there's a power imbalance, so it's a manager bullying a subordinate. But bullying in the workplace can happen peer to peer as well. And so you want to attempt to keep the communication between you and your bully to a minimum. And the reason why is this is protecting your personal power. This is protecting your mental health, and it's putting you in a position of power because you're able to, in your own private time, in your own private moment, you're able to document what was said, who was there, who said what, you know, how you responded, what you said. And that keeps you in a place of personal power. So if your bully is your immediate supervisor, of course you have to remain subordinate at work. The last thing you want to do is become insubordinate and give your bullying employer a solid reason to terminate you. That's what we want to avoid. But you want to, you know, simply take notes when there's a meeting. If you're called into a meeting, you want to be subordinate and attend the meeting, and you want to take notes during the meeting. And if you're asked a question in this meeting with your bully, you can simply respond, I'm not sure what my answer is right now, but let me, you know, I need to check into that and I'll get back to you. And so what you're doing is you're protecting your personal power, and you're keeping yourself in a position of power to navigate through this situation. And so when you can come out of a meeting and when you can go back to an email and you can document, you know, in the meeting, you asked me this question, here is my response. So that way you're keeping the communication lines pretty simple. You're going to be talking about the work and the work only. And then you're documenting what is happening. So if your bully wants to bully you and they bully you in an email, well, guess what? In the legal world, we call that evidence that can be used in court, right? And that's what we're wanting to do here, is we're wanting to document what's happening and document what's going on. If you're asked, you know, like I said, questions in a meeting, you want to take note of that, and you want to put yourself in a position to be able to research the question and actually respond with facts. So sometimes bullies will, you know, bring the target into a room or a meeting full of people, and they'll ask you a question that they know that you aren't necessarily prepared for. And your natural instinct is to want to respond. You want to answer. That's natural. But you want to make sure that when you do respond, that you're responding with the facts, that you're responding with the truth, and you're responding in a moment where you've had an opportunity to think and not just put on the spot. Okay. When you're being bullied in the workplace, it affects your mental health awareness. And in my prior slide, I kind of talked about what a hostile work environment looks like or what it feels like. And what gradually happens is your mental health starts to be affected when you're going into this battle zone every day. You can feel anxiety, depression, you can have sleep deprivation, you can even pass out, increase or decrease in your appetite, becoming introverted, withdrawing from your family and friends, having feelings of hopelessness, thinking that this job is the only job ever, that this is kind of your end all be all, and having feelings of hopelessness that there's no other option for you. Loss of enjoyment of life and daily activities. These are things that affect your ability to care for yourself. And the most important integral part of a target being bullied in the workplace is, although their mental health is affected, and although they're in this battle zone and they're essentially fighting for their life, um, the signs of you having issues with your mental health is the sign for you to get help and start to build your support system. And so, what that looks like in building your medical support system is, you're starting to put together the medical facts. You're starting to put together essentially the nuts and bolts of your complaint against this bullying employer. So you want to, you should have a primary care doctor for, your primary health care needs. And that's essentially where you want to start with your medical support system. So your medical doctor needs to kind of manage your mental health when you find yourself bullied in the workplace. And so when you make an appointment with your medical doctor, your MD, it's important that you divulge, the details of what's happening, what you're experiencing. It's great if you have a timeline. It's great if you have a calendar where you can actually, itemize or detail out to your doctor what has been going on. And your medical doctor is going to give you a diagnosis. Okay. And when you suffer from a mental health disorder, there's always, there's always going to be a diagnosis from a medical doctor, and those diagnoses are they can't really necessarily be argued or debated. Okay, so your medical doctor is going to give you a diagnosis. They're also going to give you a treatment plan, because your mental health and your self-care is vital in this entire situation. And I cannot express that um, any more than I am. But it's so important that you take care of yourself when you find yourself bullied in the workplace. And this is essentially the first step. So your medical doctor will potentially send you to specialists, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. They're going to, those specialty providers, they're going to, give you a second diagnosis and an additional treatment plan for you to follow. This documentation is so vital, because if you ever go out on FMLA, which is protected leave, you're going to need this medical documentation from your doctor, right? If you file for short-term, long-term disability benefits, you're going to need this documentation from your medical provider. So you want to stay ahead of your treatment. You want to stay ahead of this situation, and you want to stay in your personal power. So when you know that you're being bullied in the workplace and you're going to your doctor and you're getting the treatment that you need, it helps to build your personal power. You're essentially staying ahead of the game rather than behind the eight ball when you start this process. Okay. Another factor in building your medical support system is reasonable workplace accommodation requests. And medical documentation is essential for those requests as well. And I'll talk a little bit about those in the next couple of slides. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit in regards to the Americans with the Disabilities Act, the ADA Act. When you go to your doctor and you are experiencing these mental health issues because you're being bullied in the workplace, and your medical doctor diagnoses you with, for example, PTSD or anxiety or depression. So what that has done now is it has diagnosed you as an American with a disability. And Americans with disabilities have coverages and protections under the law. And it's a federal law. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, it's a civil rights law that protects people with disabilities from discrimination in all employment practices, including hiring, firing, training, pay, benefits, and promotions. That purpose is to ensure that people with disabilities have the same rights and opportunities as everyone else. So traditionally in our country, the word disability or people with disabilities, has been shunned at. And there's, people sometimes are embarrassed or feel, ashamed that they have a disability or they're diagnosed with a disability. And in my presentation, I want to empower you to understand how much power you have when you are in a protected class, especially under federal law. Now, I'm not an attorney, so none of this is legal advice. My webinar presentation, again, is from my own experience and tools and resources that I have implemented into my own situation that have proven successful for me. But what I can tell you is that when you have been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, PTSD, and you now know that you are entitled to workplace accommodation requests, and you're entitled to being protected against being discriminated against, that's empowering. It's very, very empowering because now you know you have rights, and now you know that there's law that protects you. Individuals with a disability, they have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits their major life activities. They have a record of such impairment, or they are regarded as having such an impairment. Major life activities are examples: caring for yourself, performing manual tasks, cognitive and sensory functions, walking, seeing, hearing, speaking, breathing, thinking, concentrating, right? All those things we do in the workplace every day. Operation of major bodily functions like circulation, reproduction, and individual organs, right? So those major life activities are now being affected by the environment that you're working in. And so that all goes back to your claim of being discriminated against and having a disability, because this environment that you're working in is disrupting your major life activities. Okay. When you receive this diagnosis and you're going back to work, right? And you're thinking, how can I facilitate this? How does this all work, Miss Camay? How are you packaging all of this together? And this is really what it comes down to. So in my consulting work and my focus as a consultant, I help targets strategically take calculated steps to navigate through this hostile work environment and dealing with this bully. And the main goal is to remove yourself from that environment, and that can look many different ways. Nowadays, since COVID, we've got a lot of people that work hybrid schedules. We have people that work completely remote schedules. COVID really changed the workplace for a lot of organizations. And so under the ADA Act, an American with a disability is entitled to make workplace accommodations to create a positive working environment so that their major life activities are not disrupted. The ADA Act requires an employer to consider reasonable accommodations to the known disability of a qualified employee. Key word here, only if the request would not impose an undue hardship in the operation of the employer's business. So you have to keep that in mind when you and your doctor, when you and your medical team are considering making workplace accommodation requests to change this environment that you're working in. So for example, if your employer offers, a hybrid or remote working option, that could be a reasonable accommodation request that you could make, because that is not going to impose an undue hardship in the operation of the employer's business, because that's something that they already have set up, right? Transferring to a different department. Some corporations are large. Some of our skills are transferable. So, we can work in different departments. We can do different work essentially within the same organization. So a reasonable accommodation request may be a transfer to a different department. It's not going to create an undue hardship for the organization. And so that is a key point that you want to keep in mind when you are, documenting and preparing to make your workplace accommodation requests that are going to benefit you the best. I like to call these productivity enhancers. Sometimes HR professionals and, high corporate leaders don't like the word reasonable accommodation requests. So I've come up with the word productivity enhancers, because a target that's being bullied in the workplace can essentially say, hey, I'm being bullied by this person. It's creating this hostile work environment. I'm, suffering from a mental health disorder because of this. And, I don't want this to, challenge my productivity. I don't want this to create problems for myself. So I want to make this reasonable accommodation request to enhance my productivity. I want to be transferred to this department, or I want to work from home, 100% remote. So it's a little buzzword that, sometimes sounds better to corporate leaders. You want to strategically outline specific workplace accommodations, like I said, that are already in place, so it's easy. The law does not require that your employer approve your accommodation request. The law only outlines that they are required to consider the accommodation. So you want to make sure that it's something that's streamlined, already in place. You're going to present that medical documentation, right? Because you've already gone to your medical doctor and you've already been diagnosed with this disorder and you're already getting the treatment that you need. So you're going to want to present that medical documentation when you make that reasonable accommodation request. You want to ensure that deadline submissions are met and all required documents are attached. Sometimes when you are in these types of environments, you're being looked at by many people, and you don't want to leave a margin for error. You don't want to submit paperwork late. You don't want to miss a deadline, especially in this situation when you're advocating for yourself. I want to talk just a little bit about how workplace bullying damages an organization's bottom line. You can do any type of research. You can interview any employer who has had a complaint of workplace bullying. The damages are in the billions of millions of dollars, billions of dollars. $1.2 million is how much an organization of 1,000 people will spend on the damage of one bully. And that is from reduced productivity, lost time, employee turnover, and then impact on a company's reputation. About $300 billion is how much the world spends annually on the damage that bullies cause, which comes in the form of legal costs. So employers are paying damages for health issues, millions of dollars in settlements to targets for wrongful or constructive discharge. An impact on a company's reputation. I'm finding, recently that, companies don't want people to know that they've got a problem in their office and they've got a bully. And so, millions of dollars are being spent to cover those things up so a company can maintain their reputation. My main focus in my presentation, it's a little bit different than what Dorothy has presented or what Jerry has presented. My presentation focuses on the personal power of the target. And I believe that when a target is educated and they are empowered with information, that they can successfully navigate an environment where they're being bullied that is going to set them up for success moving forward, whether that's staying in their job in a different area with a different supervisor or whether they're moving on. And that's the end of my presentation. So I'm welcome to take your questions.
Y'all feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question out loud, or you can put it in the chat, and I am happy to read it anonymously. You're getting lots of shout outs, Miss Camay, about amazing, love it, thank you.
Thank you.
I completely concur. Here is one question, Miss Camay, that is coming through. If I'm in my workplace and I feel like I'm being bullied, I'm taking the documentation, I'm going to my doctor, what do I do next? Do I talk with the bully if she is my boss or he is my boss? Do I go to HR? Do I go to my boss's boss? What do I do and in what order?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dorothy. Great question. So, when I consult with my clients, what I encourage them to do is once they have identified the fact that they're being bullied, once they've gone to their doctor and they've received this diagnosis from their doctor, I encourage targets to report the bullying. And so you want to follow the chain of command. Every organization is different. Some have, an HR department that you would report to. Some want you to report to, potentially your supervisor or the bully supervisor. So whatever chain of command, your organization outlines, that's what you want to follow. And so the basis here is you're essentially putting your employer on notice. So you're letting your employer know that, hey, I'm being bullied. And let's see, I'm trying to mute.
Jack, stop.
Somebody is muted. There we go. So what you're doing is you're putting your employer on notice and you're reporting the fact that you're being bullied, right? And so you want to focus on your mental health. You want to focus on, the treatment plan that your doctor has outlined for you. And you want to continue to document what is going on. Because 9.5 times out of 10, when a target reports bullying in the workplace, it does not stop. In fact, oftentimes it gets worse. And oftentimes the bully essentially becomes, empowered in their behavior because they feel that they have the organization behind them. So you want to continue to document. If you are retaliated against, let's say you report this bully in your workplace, and then the next day, your bully comes up to you and says, "Oh, so you're a tattletale," or they take some type of adverse action against you. That can be considered retaliation. So of course you want to document that, and then you want to report that to the chain of command. Hey, I reported, this person is bullying me. Hey, today here this happened. And so what you hope for is that your organization will kind of step in and essentially, do something, right, and intervene. And so the organization will potentially come back to you. They're going to go talk to the bully. They, let's say they come back and say, "Oh, this is just a personality conflict. The two of you just can't get along." So again, you want to document that. You want to discuss what's going on, in the workplace with your doctor, because your doctor's going to continue to see you. Your doctor's not going to diagnose you with a mental health disorder and then not ever, see you again. They're going to want to see you at regularly scheduled intervals, and any specialty provider they refer you to is going to do the same. So there will be a period of time, Dorothy, where you will just be documenting what's happening, and you'll be following, your physician's protocol. What the end all be all in this particular situation is, once you reported this to your employer and they've done nothing, you've made these workplace accommodation requests, and let's say they deny them all. So here you're stuck. You're still in this workplace. You're still with this bully. So at that time, a target would want to consider, because now you've got all this documentation, right? You've got all this documentation of these incidents where you've been bullied. You've got this medical documentation. You've been treating with your doctor. You've been telling your doctor what's going on and how it's affecting your mental health. You've been retaliated against, essentially. You're being discriminated against because you're an American with a disability. You've made these workplace accommodation requests. Your employer is not granting them. So now you have the documentation and that support system to essentially file a legal administrative complaint against your bullying employer. And that's where we're playing in the Super Bowl. That's where we start playing for that Lombardi trophy. Is when we get to that point. Great question.
Thank you, Miss Kamei. That was a huge help. And then we have a couple other questions. Margaret, do you want to jump in first?
Sure. Well, my question is, I mean, I think, after also going through this, that one of the things I really fought was for my mental health. And I think that for me, I had so much pride around the fact that I was able to cope with, withstand, and endure without having to go to my doctor and have someone tell me that the only way I'm going to be able to deal with this is to tell, you know what I'm saying? Like, for me to succumb to mental health issues as a result of this abuse was, to me, unthinkable. And I could not allow myself to give up my mental health. I mean, and don't think that it was easy, but at the same time, like, I just feel like there has to be a better way than to, not to say, because I also had a coworker who absolutely fell into mental trauma and couldn't cope. And so there were all varying different levels of how people reacted to it. And I was in a university where I know 30 plus faculty members went through this abuse. So everyone dealt with it very differently, obviously. And in some cases that may have been necessary. But I do know that in the case that one of my co-faculty members actually went and had some mental health assessment done, it was actually used against her. And instead of it being used as a podium of what should have supported her in the workplace, it ended up being used against her as not being able to do her job effectively because she's now mentally ill, and was essentially told that by our school director. So I just, I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm just like, how do you still maintain your own self-worth and still be able to battle these people without them, pushing you into a point of mental disablement? And I made it through that part, but I mean, it wasn't easy. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, no, it does make sense. And the first thing that I want to say is that your medical diagnosis, your medical treatment, that is completely private. It's completely private. That information and that documentation should not be disclosed to anybody. So when you have people in organizations who you have told, this information to, and they disclose it, that's actually a violation of HIPAA law. So you essentially have your employer on the hook if that's happening. But if you don't know that your the law is being violated and your privacy is being violated, you don't know what to do when that happens, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that I will say. Secondly, employers, when you reported bullying that's going on in the workplace, your employer is now, okay, this person is essentially a liability. So, how can we get rid of this person? And so they're going to push you. They're going to look for anything that they can to use against you. Whatever information essentially that you tell them, they potentially can use it against you. So you have to take very calculated steps, and you have to think before you speak, essentially. And that's in my presentation when I talk about documentation, when I talk about, okay, you're in this meeting, you're taking notes, but you're not responding, you're not providing any information, you're going to walk away from that meeting, you're going to give yourself an opportunity to stay in your personal power and be able to respond. So you're taking calculated steps, and you're being very subjective, essentially, in what you're saying and how you're addressing the situation. In my experience and my consulting, the documentation that you have, the medical documentation that you have, the diagnosis that you have, when you make those workplace accommodation requests, when your employer, denies them or doesn't approve them, there are protections under the law when that happens. And so oftentimes targets don't know, they don't know that. They just don't know that there is law out there essentially that protects it. So when you say that, you were able to deal with your situation without going to the doctor, without, having any type of documentation, I caution targets about that. No, you have to push your ego aside, essentially. And it's, again, that stigma that society has programmed us with, that, oh, if you have a disability or if you have this mental health disorder, you're not as good as everyone else. And you have to have that documentation in order to present it for a reasonable accommodation request. If you're going to file a complaint with the EEOC or the Equal Rights Commission, you've got to have that documentation. And the medical documentation, the medical diagnosis, your employer, your boss, the HR professional, they cannot argue that, because they're not doctors, they're not medical professionals. So it's imperative that you have the documentation of what's happening to you, as well as you have this medical documentation from a medical doctor. We've got FMLA, protections, and that's a federal protection, right? We've got short-term disability, long-term disability. Those are programs that targets can actually utilize to actually temporarily remove them from those toxic environments, which can turn into a permanent removal from those environments. And without that medical documentation, it's going to make a short-term, long-term disability claim hard to get paid for without that medical documentation. Your reasonable accommodation requests. If I go to my employer and say, hey, I need to, I want to be removed out of this department because I'm being bullied, that's just me saying it. But if I come to my corporation and say, hey, I want to be moved out of this department because I'm being bullied, and here's my medical doctor's diagnosis and treatment over the last 3 months that's showing that I'm being, my mental health is being adversely affected by being in this environment because I'm being bullied by this person. Now, hear me when I said my medical doctor has diagnosed me with a mental health condition. That's not telling them what it is. That's not giving them any details or facts, because that information is private. And you don't have to disclose what it is. You don't have to disclose your diagnosis. You don't have to disclose what your doctor is, treating you for, because that's protected under HIPAA law. But you can tell your organization, my doctor has diagnosed me with a mental health disorder because I'm being bullied in this office. And this is what my doctor is recommending. My doctor is recommending that I be removed out of this department, or that I be managed by somebody else, or that I, go to remote work, or I, work a different shift than this person, like the variables are endless essentially. But that medical documentation, your doctors are your support system, your HR department, any coworker that is in that organization, none of them are your friends, none of them are your support system. Your medical doctors are your biggest, strongest support when you're being bullied in the workplace.
Miss Kamei, thank you. That was excellent. A question from the chat, and then we have some other people that would like to ask the question themselves.
Yes, yes.
Sometimes people have the experience that they're being bullied in their workplace. They leave to go to another workplace, and then they're bullied again. And of course, we see those in case studies in our research literature as well.
Yes.
What's your thought or insights around that?
Yeah, yeah. So, great question. And my answer to that is you have been equipped with the tools and the resources to immediately identify any bully in any other organization. So you are walking in the door, power packed with this information and this knowledge and this experience. You're going to be able to pinpoint the bully. You're going to be able to pick the bully out like quickly because you've been in a situation and you've seen the behaviors and you've seen the repercussions of it happening. You might even be a bystander and not even really have been bullied, but you've witnessed the bullying and you go to another organization. And to me, that's powerful. When I walk into an office and I, have the knowledge and the experience and the wherewithal to identify a bad behavior, I already know how I'm going to deal with it, right? I'm going back to my, okay, I'm going to document. Okay, there was an incident. Okay, I'm going to document this. Oh, this is starting to affect my mental health. So I'm going to go talk to my doctor about it. I'm already building my support system. I'm already building my case for myself, and I can be alone and not have a husband or friends, right? But I can be alone and still be very powerful because I already know.
That's a great point. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then Misty, I think you are up next. And Misty, I think you are muted. I do that too all the time.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Oh, thank you, Miss May. That was just wonderful. I wish I had all that information 25 years ago. It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
So very knowledgeable and so very helpful. But yeah, something that I found when I was bullied is something Miss Kamei really emphasized is going to your doctor. And I went to my general practitioner as well as a therapist. And that was what was instrumental in getting me on intermittent FMLA. And I was given the basics, which I thought was I always wondered if it was a bit petty, but they basically gave me one mental health day off a month. So when he was psychologically abusive to me in the workplace, I could literally leave and I was protected. So thank you very much for bringing that up, because
Yes.
you're having this information is your ally. It is your strength, and it protected me for the duration that I was there until I finally found a better way to win. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Misty. For our webinar attendees, I just want to point out Misty Orlando has been a huge ally of the National Workplace Bullying Coalition. She is doing amazing, amazing, amazing work in her state of Oregon. She is, addressing her Oregon state legislators just so sweet and so nice and just so delightful as she is here today. And asking them, how do you feel about workplace bullying? And she's been able, she's taken action there in Oregon, and she's made great strides with anti-bullying legislation there in her jurisdiction. So thank you, Misty. Thank you for the work
I
that you
did
do
pass
behind
a
the
law.
scenes.
Oh, sorry, Camille. I did pass a law here, 851, Senate Bill 851, related to psychological abuse in the workplace. It requires basically the Bureau of Labor and Industry to post the harmful effects of workplace bullying and make it available to employees and employers. So it's voluntarily informational. It's in Oregon State Legislator 851.
Yay! These are my pom-poms. Yay! We thank you, Misty. We thank you. Thank you so much for your dedication and passion behind the cause. We could not do the work that we do without people like you. So thank you. Thank you so much.
I know, Misty, you are phenomenal in every way. It really is an inspiration, and I mean that. Michelle, what are you thinking?
She's on, you're muted, Michelle.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have been following you for a very, very long time. It's just now many years later that I've found the strength to really just try to speak and I still get teared up, you know. My my issue started back when I worked for municipal government, and it started back back in 2010. I had been not only harassed in a hostile environment by the town manager, but his secretary and the people that worked in his office. And it was a constant day-to-day battle. I ended up getting stress-induced vertigo and been put on, went to my primary care. She was wonderful. She had me since I've been a teenager, and I still go to her. And so she knows my life history of everything and documented everything. But again, I did leave there and went somewhere else, another community, which then, I feel like I wasn't strong enough I was strong enough to do the job and what I was entailed, but I was not strong enough to battle my second person that now it was sexual harassment with that community. So 6 months later, I left and I went to a place that I could kind of go back and just get my health back and finish my MBA and things that I was trying to do that people were trying to kind of deter me from doing, being successful and being happy. I ended up later on just having very difficult time because now you're going from the salary, your salary, your money, they hit that affected me. So then I did get another job later on and, worked my way up. But that was later on, 7 years into that one, that was where my bullying came to be. I ended up asking and had everything documented. I'm still on medication. I'm still have the stress and sometimes get vertigo still. But at that point, when I was at that employment, I had long-term disability. I had asked for, my doctor had written in my diagnosis that because they weren't accommodating anything that I was asking for, that I would not return to work until I was transferred to a new department. So they agreed to that, but it took them 6 months to do that. In the meantime, they utilized all my vacation time, sick time, and then I was not getting paid at all. And so I put in for long-term disability. I got my there was like 4 parts to this form, and it was supposed to be, I work with HR. HR was supposed to document the first part to open the application up, which they never did, and they fought me on that tooth and nail. So I opened it up myself, and I filled out everything I could. I got my doctor to fill it out, and I put everything in, and they denied me my long-term disability. When I went back to work 6 months later, I had asked HR if I could have a copy of what they submitted. That HR person told me they never submitted it. They were told to sit on it. So So that's why I was denied. Now I try to talk to the company and they won't give me any information. So it's almost like, I'm kind of confused because now I don't work there anymore and it's been about almost 3 years. So, you know, do I have any legal to go back to say like, hey, they truly didn't adhere by the law to say they didn't, they that to me is kind of retaliation that they did, so that was one of my biggest questions. And and it's hard to keep relive. I feel like I relive everything every day, so that's just another part of trying to um, get stronger, that I can think straight to really support myself and help others also later on, with all this that's going on. So any information would be wonderful. Thank you for listening.
Well, Michelle, I just want to thank you for being bold and courageous today and raising your hand and showing up for yourself today. As a target of workplace bullying survivor myself, I understand where you're at and how detrimental this experience can be. This process is not for the faint. This is not an easy process. The process that you have shared, has touched on points in my presentation, and I've gone through this exact experience, and it takes a toll on your mental health. And even once you're out of the situation, you still will experience the PTSD from what you've gone through. But you showing up today, you having a voice, you sharing your story in a public forum is so powerful. It's so, so powerful. So please acknowledge that you've done that. Acknowledge how bold you've been and your courage today. I'm not an attorney, so I can't, advise you
Right.
legally. I can't give you a legal opinion regarding, what happened in the past, and, if there are legal implications in how it
Right.
was handled. Most oftentimes there are legal implications in how
Yeah.
a corporation or a company would handle a situation like this. And what I can tell you, and again, this is from my own personal place, what you're doing, getting involved in these organizations, doing your own research, building relationships with other targets who have claimed victory over this. You are in a very powerful position today, more powerful than you were 3 years ago or even 6 years ago.
Right.
And because of what you've gone through and because of this process that you have followed, because you've documented your experience, because you've gone to your doctor, because you have applied for FMLA, because you have gone
Yeah.
through short-term, long-term disability, you have tools and resources within you now that will help you facilitate this experience should it happen to you again.
I agree. I agree. I do feel very empowered now. I and I felt like, to me it's just walk away and their loss, it's
Correct.
their loss.
Correct. Something that I share in my own personal experience is I was, in a senior role. I had worked my way up. I prayed for that job. Early in my legal career, I experienced bouts of unemployment. I actually became homeless because I was not able to keep a job. And so when I got this job and I was doing so well and I was excelling as a legal professional and I was getting, great reviews and merit increases, to have it come to a screeching, like 18-wheeler screeching halt. All 18 wheels were like,
Yeah.
was devastating to my career. This is my career choice. I didn't just have this job because I just had this job. And I felt like I was essentially, being robbed of my career, that somebody was just pulling it out from underneath me and I had no power or control. And I refused to leave. I refused to leave. In fact, I remember, one of the last days saying, like, in complete hysteria, why can't I just quit? Why can't I just leave? Most people would just leave. Most people would just quit. Why can't I just leave? And, I was fighting a battle that I'd already lost. And I was fighting for a position, and I was fighting for a title, and I was fighting for, the accomplishments that I already had. And in that experience, what I could not see and what I was blind to is the next organization that was going to value me, that was going to appreciate my experience, that was going to appreciate my legal prowess, that was going to appreciate my vibrancy, that was going to value me as an employee. And that's what was missing. So, to say to you, as you go forward, Michelle, that next company, that next organization, that next group that you volunteer with, those people are going to value you. They're going to appreciate you. They're going to want your knowledge. They're going to want your experience. Don't keep fighting a battle that you've already lost.
Right. Thank you.
Great question.
Thank you.
Miss Camay, that's so beautifully said, and so true. And we're all here. We're here, like, right here with you, standing in that space, Michelle. So you really are courageous. Miss Camay, I know it's 5 p.m. in Nevada. It's a little after 8 p.m. here, in Virginia. Do you think that you're ready to kind of wrap things up and keep it at that hour?
Yeah. Unless somebody has any more questions, I definitely want to get to, people's questions, but I want to also be respectful of everybody's time. So if we've got a couple more questions, yep, I'm fine to answer. And if not, you guys can connect with me on social media. You can email me directly. You can follow me on TikTok, and, we can continue the conversation there as well.
And then, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, if you'd like to make a donation to the National Workplace Bullying Coalition, you're hearing about all of this great work that the organization is doing. You can do that through the website fairly easily. And of course, everything is appreciated. And just a huge shout out to Miss Camay for sharing her personal stories, her expertise, her kindness. She's exactly who you see today. She's such an authentic and powerful and just lovely person. So, Miss
Aw,
Camay, just can't begin to thank you enough. And I
thank
know
you.
personally, I'm going to want to kind of go back and hear this again. And we will have this posted on our NWBC website, or I should say website, YouTube channel. So
Correct.
you can share it with your friends and your colleagues and revisit yourself. Miss Camay, do you want to share any final words?
Yeah, in closing, I want to encourage anybody that is a target that's being bullied in the workplace, or anyone that's here that knows someone that's being bullied in the workplace. I have found that when we encourage each other as human beings to walk in our personal power, because it's all individual to each one of us, when we walk in our personal power, we can claim victory over any obstacle, over any storm in our life. And when we go through these experiences, it empowers us. It gives us the tools and the resources to weather that next storm that's going to come, because they come. They're going to come, right? But in our own personal power, we can build our own arcs that are going to, survive any storm that could potentially come our way.
That's so beautifully said.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Miss Camay. Thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. And please reach out to Miss
Can,
Camay directly.
are you gonna post her contact information?
Yeah, let me share my screen really quickly, and I will post that up for you guys. Are you guys able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So my website, misscamayinternational.com. All of the services that I provide are listed there on my website. You can book a consultation with me. I'm right there on my website as well. You can also contact me through my website. You can send me an email directly. My email is misscamayinternational@gmail.com. And then I would love for everybody to follow me on TikTok. I post great informational videos on my TikTok page, and reach out, you know, to targets who are being bullied in the workplace there as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Miss Camay. It's just the highlight of the day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dorothy. I so appreciate you. You edify me so eloquently, and I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for what you bring to the organization. I'm so grateful, you know, for I love your big tent belonging, you know. You guys have got to check out Dorothy's presentation. It's on our YouTube channel. You know, she really kind of explains, I think, the intellect behind we as humans and how we want to belong. And you know, those dragons that are out there that, you know, like to spew fire at everybody. So be sure to check out our YouTube channel, you guys.
100%. And get involved in NWBC. A lot of you already are involved, and we'd love to have you.
Yes, yes. Okay, wonderful. Thank you guys so much. Next week, Wilma DeSoto, our
Yes.
executive board member, yep, she will be presenting next week. So Tuesday, the 29th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys have got to catch her presentation. It's going to be great closing out Bullying Awareness Month for the month of October. Please join us, you guys.
We'll be there. Don't worry.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Mwah. See you guys on social media.
Bye.
Bye-bye.